Good morning, Slow.
Good morning.
I'm going to conclude this today with a little story time. So if I can invite you to watch the slideshow and just consider me the narrator, then I can be a little learner. On May 2nd, 1963, in the midst of a movement to desegregate schools and public spaces, 4,000 students in Birmingham, Alabama skipped class to protest Jim Crow segregation. They ranged in age from 7 to 18. In 1963, Birmingham became the epicenter of the civil rights movement. Early in 1963, a coalition that included the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the local chapter of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, Reverend Ralph Abernathy and Dr. Martin Luther King came together to lead a desegregation campaign. Jim Crow segregation, a policy King called domestic colonialism, allowed the government to distribute rights and resources based on race. Birmingham was 40% black and notoriously segregated, and so a plan was put in place to protest there. They started in April. They marched. They were met with violence. They were arrested. Almost 100 people were arrested that first day. Then the children got involved. It makes sense. Desegregation largely centered children. While desegregation policy began with federal workers and the United States military in 1948, perhaps the most controversial and well-known policy came 6 years later with the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision desegregating schools. Here, children are the main actors. This was a child's fight. And truly, here, if we look at these photographs, they're iconic to U.S. history. We see children on the front lines taking the risk to implement dignity. Government may have enacted the policy, but it was children who had to take those first steps onto campus. Children have been ever present in this movement. The mass meetings held at the beginning of the year for the April protests took place at the 16th Street Baptist Church. The local adults who showed up to organize, they were largely working class. They brought their children. Many young people got involved. They listened, they read, they joined the training for nonviolent protests. And so the children marched, 4,000 of them. They met at the 16th Street Church, then proceeded out into public in groups of 10 to 50 carrying signs. They too were arrested. On the first day, over 100 children were arrested. They too were met with violence. On the second day, city officials, as they had done with the adults, turned fire hoses, batons, and dogs on the kids. Over the next several days, over 2,000 children were arrested. It was widely covered in the news. It went viral. And the images shocked people and the country around the world, shocked them out of complacency. On May 5th, the children persisted, marched to City Hall, demanded the release of their jailed peers, and continued to push to end segregation. On May 10th, an agreement was reached. The arrested children were released. Local businesses began to desegregate first. The City Board of Education, they had expelled all the students involved, but in a demonstration of just how far the protest had spread, the United States Court of Appeals overturned their suspension. President John F. Kennedy was moved to act and addressed the nation on June 11th with a speech that is translated into 13 languages today on the Kennedy Presidential Library website. He spoke to Americans about dignity. Dignity deserved by all people and all ages. And he asked Congress to pass civil rights legislation. It didn't come easy. On September 15th, 1963, 4 months after the school walkouts, the 16th Street Church where the children had organized was bombed, killing 4 little girls. On November 22nd, 5 months after he addressed the nation, Kennedy was assassinated. But the tide had turned. Exactly 14 months after the Children's Crusade, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, passed by the United States Congress, was signed into law by President Johnson. You know, sometimes we forget that children are political actors and are impacted by political actions. It makes sense that children would take the lead in matters that not only involve them in the moment, but will shape the world that they inherit. These children believed that with courage, they could change the way people thought about them. They believed if they were persistent, they could do what their parents had not been able to do and end Jim Crow segregation. They believed that with action, they could shape policy that freed them and reflected the world they wanted to live in, we the people. They believed they could change the world. And the kicker is, they were right. All right, thank you.